Hello, Howard Berger. Before we chat about Al Adamson movies, may you please tell me how your life has been affected by quarantine?
I'll be honest with you. I work from home mainly. I have everything here is at home. Nothing's really changed. I don't really go out very much anyway. I just stay on Facebook most of the time because I'm usually, editing, like doing 18, 20-hour days. So no, nothing's changed except fear that I will contract it without having violated any, that's the only thing. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm pretty good. I'm actually an essential worker, though, so I am mingling with humanity.
It's a good thing you're not in this room.
But not too much. Not too much. I'm actually doing okay. I've used the time to be productive. I'm doing all right. So okay, but I gotta tell you something. That Al Adamson box set looks magnificent. Are you excited to get your hands on this release?
I'm pantless. I'm waiting pantless for it. I am very excited.
Oh my!
First of all, it's like I don't even care. I haven't seen the masters except for Dracula versus Frankenstein is the one I was working with. So
right.
For the featurette that I was doing, but there are movies of his which I actually thought I would never see. I have never seen them, and I've never seen, but I don't know, they've just gone the big distance. And it just what can I say? I mean, this is for me. I mean, I grew up with watching Al Adamson movies, not on TV. I actually saw, I think, a majority of them starting from when I was a little movie freak when I was a kid, really tiny, like before I was in kindergarten. So I've seen, I remember just going through ads that just I had to see, and I would drag my dad, or my grandma or my sisters, whoever was older and could get us in. Satan Sadists. I think that was the first one that I ever saw in a theater, and then Dracula's Castle. Definitely, of course, Dracula versus Frankenstein was a life changer for me. What can I say? One of the most important, contributions to my childhood was seeing Al Adamson movies.
And the package looks fantastic. I don't know if you've seen some of the videos of them flipping through the box.
Actually, I haven't. I kind of don't want to see it until it's in my hands.
Okay, I won't say any more.
Yeah, no, I'm really. It's one of those things I'm just too psyched about. Yeah. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just I'm allowing it to build up. So
yeah, the hype is palpable. I can tell you're very excited.
It's part of the experience. I mean, like, I want to be as excited to go through this box set as I was driving to the theater in 1972 to see Dracula versus Frankenstein and Frankenstein's Bloody Terror. Like, that's, I want to keep it as infantile and as possible. The excitement just to percolate. Especially I'm really proud of that. I was asked to contribute to this thing is what I'm really happy about. Me and my destructible man partner, Kevin Marr, we were really wanting to do this for, 10 years prior to this box set, of just being given a chance to actually not talk about the production, not talk about, but really sort of try and tell people that what we see in something which was considered like one of the most reviled films on the IMDb,
Nice.
We always thought, I mean, when Kevin and I first started discussing it together, we couldn't believe how much we had agreed on the fact that this movie to us doesn't look like some inept, piecemeal film, which a lot of people, just sort of write it off as. But it honestly, we see some pretty brilliant things in the movie that I don't think they were intentional, obviously, because it's written. But it was what I think is amazing is that they really weren't trying to do anything but make a really sellable piece of schlock for the market, and that's what I love about movies in general. And this one's such a perfect example that I don't care what people. I don't care if people like or don't like the movie. I've gotten to such a point where it's probably mainly because of this film changing my whole outlook on cinema in general, is that there's a lot of amazing stuff going on here, and people are not they don't see it because they don't look past certain like little biases or prejudices that they've gotten probably from growing up reading Leonard Maltin or other critical assessments of film, rather than trying to analyze a film or look into what's actually there. So I don't really care what market it was made for. I really don't care. I just don't care if it entertains people or it doesn't. What I like is what it is. It's a pretty interesting film on its own. But Al Adamson, in addition to that, I mean, his life is pretty fascinating, and the people he worked with were pretty amazing. He worked with Vilma Zsigmond and Laszlo Kovacs in the beginning, and Gary Graver, who luckily I knew a little bit, and he was a real sweetheart, but he was also a fantastic and a really really good director of. Mainly what I've seen was the hardcore porn that he had done. They're really great. I think it's worth more if you have an open mind, and you're not just watching it because of what you've heard about Al Adamson already. It is, I think there's a few of his movies that kind of bypass that, maybe accidentally, but and it certainly isn't maybe all due to him. I mean, but there's some really interesting films. Brain of Blood's another one I think is just incredible. Love Brain of Blood. Basically, I like the two with Robert Engel, Zandor Vorkov. That he's great. I mean, he's kind of like a lucky charm for me with those things.
So of his contemporaries, who would you compare Al Adamson to?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, it's interesting you say that. I because I look at things so differently. Maybe in the industry. He's sort of like the American version of like Pete Walker in England, or Norman Warren, someone who really was just doing films for a certain niche, and by hook or by crook, just totally getting away with murder with your cast and crew, and but working with reasonably talented people. In America, I mean, there's so many. I mean, you could just go down the list. Dave Friedman, or in one respect, Russ Meyer, who I think was more, had more of a cinematographic, advantage. I mean, he was a great still photographer. He was a great photographer, good editor, but he had a certain style. So I don't really, it's hard for me. I don't, other than, looking at it, just superficially, there's a lot of these guys that were out there. I mean, you can even say Larry Cohen. Again, what they do, each person sort of does it to their own beat. But right. These were just guys who had a knack and a drive and an interest that really suited the I'm not going to say grindhouse. It is, some of them are, but just the exploitation market. I mean, it's kind of well covered, but I don't see things like that. I understand the superficiality of the industry. That's, so of course they're all going to be, all these names like Herschel Gordon Lewis, they're kind of clumped in together, especially over the years with the research book and the, early on, like the Midnight Movies book, these names sort of got corralled together, rightfully so. Doris Wishman, the whole Something Weird, video label did really managed a great service to people, cinema history, and really archiving and cataloging these stuff is just great that they're at your fingertips now, and you can sort of fantasize and even romanticize about the the grindhouse era. I mean, it's a something which is a cool alternative to mainstream filmmaking and distribution. I mean, the histories are really, really wild. Sometimes kind of dangerous, scary histories too. But Al, to me, he's on his own. I mean, him and Sam Sherman, his main producer, collaborator. Their films were, they shaped my childhood. Certainly, it started with me getting in trouble in school for talking about them, or show and tell. In kindergarten, I remember I got in trouble because I was talking about some of these things,
Right.
the movies I saw the night before or whatever. I mean, that nobody expected that, and then so to me, this is part of my childhood, and kind of a stepping stone to other things. People talk about like marijuana leading you to harder drugs. It's like, well, you say, Al Adamson, totally led me into, harder cinema, but he's fascinating, and the movies are really great. I mean, there's more movies that, the thing with me is, like, you always hear people go, "Oh, this is so bad it's good." Well, if you think it's good in any way, then it's obviously it's good. I mean, it's kind of silly to say, well, I know it's technically inept. Well, who cares? Who cares?
Yeah.
Would you like it if it felt any different? If it was more anonymous with every other movie at a certain level of technical, or budgetary, slickness or something? I don't. It doesn't jive with me. I just go film by film, and I don't really have expectations more than being interested to see how this particular director had to handle this particular production.
All right. So tell me about the first time you saw Al's movie, Dracula versus Frankenstein.
Well, Dracula versus Frankenstein. I mean, first, I can't remember which came first. I'm pretty sure that it was issue, I think, I can't remember what it was. I think it was 89 of Famous Monsters of Filmland, which, definitely I was getting before I was in school. Before I was like 2 or 3 years old, just because my mom would plop me in the front of the shopping cart in the supermarkets. And we had this one supermarket we had. It all had a wall of magazines, and that was like, to keep me, sort of placated during the shopping experience rather than getting antsy or, whatever. She would stop by there first, and there would always be the horror magazines is what I was really gravitated towards, all the Eerie publications and all the Warren publications and Famous Monsters especially. And I remember distinctly, I'd already been getting that. That's how I was introduced to it. So when there was a big cover of Xander Vorkov, the actor Robert Engel, on the for Dracula versus Frankenstein on the cover of Famous Monsters. I think it was 89, and I'm not sure. I think it was like sometime in I can't remember, like 70 or 71. I might have already been in school. Again, I might have been in kindergarten or first grade at that point. Still tiny. I was tiny, and that got me. Then one Sunday, again, I can't remember how close to getting the issue. It was probably a while after. So it must have been 72-ish. I might have already been like in second grade or the end of first grade or something. I just can't remember. But I remember seeing in the newspaper, I think it was the Long Island Press, there was an ad for Dracula versus Frankenstein, and I think it was being shown in Fresh Meadows, which is near Queens, the Long Island Queens border. I think it was Fresh Meadows. And I think it was playing with Frankenstein's Bloody Terror. And I think, again, history is awful. I think it was in 3D. And I don't remember it being, because I have like, stigmatism with my eyes anyway, so I don't know if I even saw the 3D correctly, but I have a memory of it not being very good 3D, if it was, because I don't remember the 3D. Usually I remember the 3D. I mean, I saw House of Wax the same year, and the 3D was just amazing to me, and I remember the experience. So I can't, it's just, I don't know. I may have read way too much Al Adamson propaganda over the years, and it might have changed my memory. But in any case, it was doubled with that film, the Paul Naschy film. And I was like a pig in shit. It was just the greatest. It was the great. I can't even explain. The reason why I wanted to go, it wasn't playing anywhere near us. We were all the way out in Stony Brook, Long Island. And it was really rural in the early 70s still. So it was, going a half hour seemed to me as a kid like it was, an all-day event type thing, just to drive like 40 minutes somewhere. And when we went there, the only reason my dad agreed, he worked really hard. He really liked he just liked doing things with me. He didn't care what it was. And I in the ad, it said that both Frankenstein and Dracula were making personal appearances at the screening. So it wasn't even like a question for me. He's like, all right, let's just go. Let's go. So it was the most exciting thing, getting parking. And as my dad's parking, I remember distinctly like peering around out of the car windows looking for Frankenstein and Dracula and worrying if Dracula was going to be killed because of this, because he can't be in sunlight. And I was like, all these things. So, but it was to me, I remember that theater being humongous and amazing, and I really don't know what to say. It was just an extraordinary extraordinary event. I mean, as years went on, I think I always watched it when it was on TV, and I don't remember. I mean, it had to have been cut apart. I mean, I don't remember. I wish I had a tape of some of the 70s transmissions used to be on, but just to see what they kind of looked, what between memory and what it actually was. I would love to see what it looked like. But I watched it whenever it was on. I watched all of the other Adamson films, whether they were in the cinema or on TV. And I just would end up watching them after a while of just picking movies to see, and then reading about them in Famous Monsters or Castle of Frankenstein was another amazing magazine. I think it was geared towards a little bit more collegiate audience. And then the Monster Times concurrently was another one, sort of rode the line between an older, more informed group and then, kids. And then, they were just all these other, sort of satellite publications, one-shots or just short-lived mags that I used to just get anything and all. So the name, by the time you're in third grade, it's all there is to know about Al Adamson or Sam Sherman, whether you liked it or not. So as it went on, I don't think there's been a year in my life where I have not watched Dracula versus Frankenstein.
Oh my God.
At the very least once, but once it came out on VHS, which it was on Super Video label, I think, which was a big clamshell box, great artwork, the great independent international artwork. It was so exciting again. And then a little later, Sam Sherman re-released it under his own label, which was with the vial, it was like a headline on each box calling them the worst films ever made. And I remember feeling really betrayed because I never think like that. I never thought of any maljudgment on this thing. So it was a little, to me, I was just like, by the 1980s, I was just like, oh, really? No. And then of course, the idiots, the Medved brothers, when they made their wonderful political attempt to subvert the independent film industry and devalue it, and they really went for this propaganda that films are either good or bad, redeemable or irredeemable, and there was always, and then I think even earlier than that, you had Siskel and Ebert, who I never cared for personally, even when I was like in 5th or 6th grade, when they were first on in 75, 76, when I first saw them. I kind of always looked at, even if they liked movies, I kind of always looked at them like, who cares? You're like the enemy. And I never liked their opinions on it. I didn't understand why they needed to cast, such, poor, bad vibes on films. I just like, wow, so that was kind of everything I just kind of stayed away from, and Dracula versus Frankenstein. Finally, I was like, by the time it was actually being labeled publicly as one of the worst films anyone's ever seen, I guess stymied me. I actually was finally looking at it in a totally different light, which was what kind of prompted me in Kevin Marr to obsess over this film to begin with. I mean, we have a side thing that we're doing called Destructible Man, and Destructible Man is all about what we've witnessed just from having binging movie marathons for 30 years together whenever we can. Harder now that he's in New York and I'm in Los Angeles, but we still find ways of doing this. But we've discovered when we're watching these movies is that in any movie that has basically a dummy death, which is an actor, have it being substituted for his own safety during a death scene, he's substituted with an effects mannequin. So just from watching thousands of these, literally we have a registry which is getting longer and longer every day. When a film has a dummy death, we start noticing a lot of thematic and a lot of visual sort of tie-ins, ripple effects. And we're not academic. I mean, we could be academics. We're not. We don't like to approach things from an academic standpoint, although certainly we couldn't help ourselves with Dracula versus Frankenstein, because there are copious dummy deaths, and there are remarkably consistent ripple effects to the storyline and the way the film is made, from that you could definitely associate from the fact that they're not afraid to go extreme and substitute a living person with stuffed laundry, basically. Now, what I find fascinating about that whole thing is that whether you like it or not, I mean, a movie is not supposed to be some self-conscious experience where you go sit and you watch it and you go, this is so phony, or this is so real, or you're supposed to buy into the illusion of reality for every movie, no matter what. And, no matter how stylized, no matter what, you're entering another sense of perception. You're entering someone else's stylization technically, but it's also a world they're creating. That's one of the reasons why people like Stanley Kubrick, who has managed to deal with lower brow subject matter in a very highbrow analytical style, or maybe not discernibly analytical, but it certainly provokes analysis, a certain style. Clockwork Orange, for example, he couldn't wait to do an X-rated movie after his G-rated sci-fi epic didn't do the business. It wasn't the business model he had hoped to impress the studios with. So he went and did what he thought was the next big step. And this was at the time when Adamson's stuff was on display, like Satan's Sadist was raking in the cash. Low budget biker movie, sleazy biker movie. It probably had dalliances with the recent Charles Manson massacres, this terrible, the Sharon Tate killings, all those things. So he wanted to take advantage of that. And if you watch, you watch Clockwork Orange, and of course there's like antecedents everywhere. He just, visual clues that he's inspired by a lot of these, every biker movie ever made, including going back to like West Side Story and definitely The Wild Angels. There's scenes from so Kubrick was definitely sort of legitimizing this genre while simultaneously commenting on both the genre itself and the audience that absorbs it, that craves it, that will pay money for it. And of course, Clockwork Orange was not just a critical hit, but it was also a audience blockbuster. Did incredible business, and mainly it was, I think, not even made for $2 million, which unlike the 10 plus that 2001 had cost the studio, this was he was deliberately trying to prove that he could be part of, like he was trying to do with Full Metal Jacket as well, was another thing where he was trying deliberately to be part of a major contributor to the genres or subgenres. Dracula versus Frankenstein, again, whether it was intentional or not, it definitely still did the same sort of thing that Kubrick was intending to do. And that is by making comment on the current society that demands to be thrilled and scared when they go into a movie theater. And Dracula versus Frankenstein goes, heavily metaphorically into a discussion about the nature of the director to the camera, to the screen, to the audience, and the audience to the screen, and the audience outside of the theater. So we started seeing this, and the way Kevin and I have been approaching this is that we understand that the audience, like I was saying, has to accept the dummy as, if you notice it, which you're not really supposed to in a death scene. You're supposed to just think it's the character dying, whatever way we need them to die. And you're not supposed to be called out of the reality of this, right? I mean, the whole point is you're supposed to buy into this illusion. And so whether you like it or not, you have to, if you're noticing the effect, then what's happening is your character is visually transforming into something slightly or totally inanimate for whatever duration it's on the screen. So the way I saw it was, if I have to buy that, then I also have to buy the rest of the reality that's going on in a movie. And I just never questioned it, because when I go to watch a movie, I watch a movie. I don't go to oversee the success or failure according to my personal private criterion, which can change at any given moment, and suddenly be laudatory as, 5 years earlier I would have hated it. Now, I understand my obligation to cinema. I just naturally adopted to it. I only kind of understood what I was doing, fairly recently in the last 10 years or so, when I just started noticing this phenomenon was just ridiculous. And so Dracula versus Frankenstein has these things, has these dummy deaths, but it also has these this trust or this bond with the audience. And I respect that, and I don't try and redirect the film in or be disappointed if it wasn't what I would have wanted. I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, you think about it. So many, you read on Facebook and Twitter, everywhere, blogs. People just think that it's a giving they're basically telling more about their own bias and prejudices and failed expectations when they start to give negative assessments of movies. That's why you'll always find, when there's a film labeled as like a debacle in any manner, there will always be defenders.
Tell us what people can expect from your visual essay on Dracula versus Frankenstein.
Well, basically, I'm with my partner Kevin Marr. We are going by our Destructible Man name, which is the Flying Machiste Brothers. So this is basically our chance to show the average viewer how we see things, not just about Al Adamson and Dracula versus Frankenstein. We're using it as an amazing example, but how we approach watching films and what within the film itself, how that processes to us. And Dracula versus Frankenstein, with the whole idea of this world that Adamson has created, again, it's sort of the fact that it has what we use to sort of as a starting point for analyzing pictures. It's not it's sort of our main focus is that it has dummy deaths. So and there's many of them. So really we had to look once we see that there's dummy deaths, and the fact that we are completely buying into the idea that we are what we are watching is what we are supposed to be believing and living. So whether it's low budget or not, or whether you see someone, transform into a sack of laundry for 5 minutes in their death scene, basically we're not judging. We're not judging any of the elements. We are accepting it as the reality that we were asked to believe. So our approach to this video essay was that it wasn't, dissecting the production. It was sort of bracketing the production, bracketing the experience of Dracula versus Frankenstein with who made it and under what circumstances. And these were all that we could see incredibly unpretentious, unostentatious people. They weren't trying to make high art. They weren't even trying to make art. They were trying to pay the bills in a way that they enjoy making the money to do so. And but and I think the film itself, and if you watch the essay, it goes into this. The film itself draws that distinction. It's all about the nature of the director to his camera, to the screen, and then the screen to the audience, and the audience dealing with the fear, the desire for being shocked and terrified in the theater, and then reality intervening, a frightening world they actually have to deal with in reality outside the theater. And that's what we found fascinating, and that it was so articulate. Where people would say the film was inept, we always saw the exact polar opposite. So the point of the video essay, which is in exorbitant detail, we were allowed to just go on, and we made sure that the argument that we're stating, the points that we're making, are backed up consistently by references in the movie. Because we're not reading into the movie, we're reading the movie. It's one of the few instances that you could sound like we're sort of rambling academics. It's not. The whole thing is people are trashing this movie, and I think they've been taught that that's okay to do. And the reason I don't just go and trash a movie based on my emotional reaction to something is because I know it functions on various levels simultaneously, and I'm the last guy considered. It's something I'm experiencing that other people can experience with their own perceptions. So to say that, I can sit here and say it's crap, it just really is a badly worded way of saying I don't have the tolerance for it. I've put up barriers based on some previous prejudice or something, I've built myself a brick wall. I never want to do that. I'd rather learn from the movie whatever I can and broaden my understanding of whoever created it, whoever collaborated to create it. So that's really what it's about. And it's about 58 minutes. So, I kind of warn people already, if you already think the film's a piece of crap and you're not going to and it's just fun to watch and you're not going to, then don't even waste your time, because it will be wasting your time. If you are open-minded and you want to actually see what the film is saying increment by increment, which is to me extraordinary and really articulate and kind of passionate and sometimes poignant and sometimes, then by all means give it a whirl. But if you're just already decided that that would be reading into like polishing a turd, then don't go near turds. I mean, that's like, okay, so just whatever, you won't buy it. There's nothing's going to change your mind, unless we do change your mind, which is always another reason to say maybe I'll have my mind change. It might not, but that was our purpose, was to finally go through it and show people that these things that they called that happens with any low budget production that's not aspiring to be, like I was saying, like A Clockwork Orange, which is like, something high art, commenting on low art and low art being delivered in addition to being examinable as high art, which is what like something like Clockwork Orange and even something like Full Metal Jacket does. I mean, he's aware of what an audience is expecting to energize them, whether it's to shock or scare or the most extreme elements of cinema tend to be the ones that draw the bigger audiences. They want the experience. It works for individuals in many, many different ways why they want that. But this film really talks about why people want to be scared. And there's dialogues, there's monologues, there's dialogues, there's whole sequences planned out. It's just an incredibly sophisticated script, and the fact that it was made, I mean, to increase the unintentionality of it. I mean, really look at this. It was made two different films, kind of one to sort of change the failed first commercial attempt at this movie, which was called The Blood Seekers, originally, many other names attached to it as well, but then, when they finally decided over 2 years later that, what a great idea, we're going to add Dracula and Frankenstein into this and do a couple of little reshoots and sort of orient the story. It was just a brilliant move, not just commercially, because now you have Dracula and Frankenstein as your title, two of the most lucrative monsters, of the 20th century, especially in cinema, let alone literature and all these other formats, but in films it's just tried and true, and it was also probably in public domain, so it wasn't gonna kill Sam Sherman to actually involve Dracula or Frankenstein. So it's just sort of endlessly clever, and the fact that you can't just I just don't believe that they thought this was going to be anything but something commercial, the way they knew how to do it. And again, that's how we just look at it. We let the chips just fall. And just a very sophisticated, fascinating film. And a lot of this stuff comes back. Like if we watched, and I really recommend following that up with I'm saying it like this, and people are going, he's crazy because he's saying these, he's bloviating about or whatever. I don't care. This is how I feel. Brain of Blood is a masterpiece. It's brilliant. It's just a wonderful film, and it's again really, really smart. It goes into a lot of the same sort of metaphorical associations that Dracula versus Frankenstein go through. Builds up. I mean, I just think there's this wonderful sense of, especially in Dracula versus Frankenstein, this wonderful sense of appreciation for what they grew up with. Like how I'm talking about, Al Adamson changing my childhood. They were affected by the Universal horror films and also by the PRC, Republic, and some of the occasional Paramount horror films of their childhood. And that's mainly Sam Sherman's, I think his contribution is this wonderful sense of living nostalgia, of nostalgia being reprocessed and still viable in no matter what era you happen to want to participate with it. So it really is a wonderful thing, and it's not just like me going, I love movies that are so bad they're good. I don't think like that. I don't care about it. I don't want to judge them. I want to understand them. That's the benefit that I can get out of it. Is my emotional response. Well, it's always going to be there. Everyone will have things like, oh, I wish this, or I wish it was that. Wish I hadn't spent the time watching it. I mean, you'll hear many permutations, but honestly, it's an amazing movie. Yeah, I just want to ask you a question. Have you seen Dracula versus Frankenstein yourself, or if not, what Adamson have you seen?
I have seen this movie. I watched it to prepare for this interview.
Okay, cool. What did you think?
Well, I think I need to see it on Blu-ray, but it seemed very funny, and it definitely reminded me of Brain of Blood, which I own. I have the when Severin put it out on the Hemisphere Horror box set.
Right. Sure.
I was able to watch. I've seen it 2 or 3 times. So I definitely got the same vibe. I had the sense that there was maybe authorship behind this work, and I also, superficial or not, I got sort of a Herschel vibe, Herschel Gordon Lewis. So basically, I thought it was just like decent. I didn't think it was amazing, but I love your passion for it. And
again, it's not designed. It really isn't created to generate critical awe.
Right.
I think again, this is what fascinates me is people are so used to talking about these things as if as if they're supposed to all be equal in execution.
Mm-hmm.
Like is Gone with the Wind comparable to 2000 Maniacs?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in certain aspects regarding images of the South, but I wouldn't stylistically. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really heavy. So to me, again, the reason why I'm kind of just so passionate about just to isolate this film, Dracula versus Frankenstein. It's not because it does anything. It doesn't violate anything I've already sort of had to train myself to ask of movies in general.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is if you just stand back and look at it beyond its whatever limitations technically or in any capacity that someone it's not what they want. I'm trying very, very hard from not to look at movies from the way I expect them to be, or the way I want them to be, or that I think they should be. And I use this movie as a sort of an early litmus test to see if I can still get something tremendous out of a movie without feeling superior to it. And this this movie sort of it's a perfect, for me, a very perfect example of how you can watch a film and just immediately react to its technical deficiencies of what you're used to. But it also starts to make me realize, God, what do I expect from every movie to be the same? And if I do, why do I want that? Why would I want that? Why on earth would I care? And it's funny. I just like hearing how why people watch movies or why they react to them or what they're hoping for. And you basically just said it. I mean, it's a person just wants to experience something that other people found interesting in one way or another, and their mood can shift, right? It's why people watch Hammer movies in a certain time of year. I hear a lot of people going, "Oh, springtime is my Hammer time," things like that. It's just a certain association that they have, and then you hear, if you get down and dirty with it, you'll hear like something like people will talk about the 1967 Casino Royale, and they'll go, "Oh, it's a disaster," mainly because they're they've heard all the people who were fired from that movie talking, and Leonard Maltin and all these guys, where they're saying it's a disaster because it doesn't make any sense, and but of course, if you grew up with it like I did, seeing it when it came out, also it was, I think, up until Blazing Saddles, the most financially successful comedy ever released. So, I mean, there are misconceptions about whether it was popular or not. It was popular, and it made money, and a lot of people benefited. They might have been stymied the way it was put together, the way that Dracula versus Frankenstein's put together. It can stymie people. Why should I give it credence? It's not that I'm giving it credence. It's just that it's there. Kevin and I just thought, like, well, if it's damned, then it can only make it step up a notch in some people who are, again, willing to open their minds a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely two ways of seeing movies at all times. There's the emotional reaction, which is all based on bias and prejudice and preconceived notions and desired expectations and personal, power that you want to have over a movie, a superiority over the movie itself. Then there's the other way, which is the way, I care to stress, and that is that it is something which actually exists on its own, independently of you, if you've seen it or not, and independently of your judgments and of your taste, and it does communicate a specific, sort of finite series of things, and I think it's fascinating because of that. So that's another thing, is I'm curious how other people think of the movie originally, but if they're willing to sort of allow their own judgment to just sort of drip away for a different sort of method of looking at it.
Okay, so who do you think gives the best performance in Dracula versus Frankenstein?
Oh, that's so unfair. It's really unfair. I really have a soft spot for Robert Englund, the Xander Varkov, Dracula in this. I really think it did its job, because when I was a kid, I had no judgment of this as a kid. That wasn't in my brain. I had no idea what that was. I didn't know I could. I knew I could be scared of a movie, or I could want to, I could be bored maybe sometimes. It really didn't happen too much when I was a kid that I remember, but he really was, and I love I never questioned when a movie had a different actor as a Dracula. And I remember sitting with my grandmother, and she was wondering, we were watching House of Dracula with John Carradine played the vampire, and my grandmother's like, that's Dracula? Yeah, I was like, and I'm like, they said he was Dracula, he's Dracula. That's how I usually took it. Nowadays, a lot of people don't do that. They go, he's a terrible Dracula, he's just a clown. I'm like, I didn't see it that way. He was Dracula. It was Dracula. So the context with which Sherman and Adamson create this character, it's based on pure nostalgia anyway. And I just sort of, it just made sense to me. I never questioned it, whatever. But I do think he had some great moments in this. I love Anthony Isley, of course. I mean, and I also have a real I think Regina Carroll is really perfect for it too. I mean, especially she wasn't an actress, she was just a waitress. I think that Al Adamson really took a shine to, and she's really good, and it's a very tragic end for both of them, very young. Unfortunately, Adamson and Carroll. Regina Carroll died a few years before of cancer. I don't even think she was 50. I think she was maybe 48 or something like that. It was very sad. But watching her performance, I love this. I love her in one of the last, the second to last, penultimate Al Adamson film, Carnival Magic, which is really a charming pseudo family movie, not a children's movie, but family movie. That's some more adult themes in it, which kind of are peculiar to the formula of these kind of matinee type movies especially that era and already into the 80s. I liked Regina Carroll. I think she's a really great personality in it, and yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. The film definitely generates laughs, but anything of that kind of that Las Vegas, commitment to the style of the movie itself, it's always going to generate some kind of camp laughter, or retroactively camp. I don't think it was intentional at all. Camp is sort of intentional. I don't think this was intentional. I think it was affectionate, and I think it was trying to be nostalgic and put things in context, like the use of J. Carrol Naish, who I also think is really fascinating in this, because I grew up thinking, again, I was like, he's Frankenstein. I didn't question it. You watch it now and you go, well, I understand perfectly well how people can be kind of set aback by it, but what he's saying in the movie is so profound to not just the story, but beyond it, to the experience of watching movies. My jaw just unhinges. I mean, I think everybody's pretty appropriate. Lon Chaney Jr. is for someone who was probably in advanced stages of throat cancer, I wouldn't even have to cut him slack, because he's just playing the part, and I bought, again, as a kid, I bought it. And growing up, I kind of understood the parallels between like, and we go into this in the featurette, but the fact that he's, mimicking the Lenny of Mice and Men, with his pet puppy, and the rabbits, and it just makes it's, when you see it and you realize, I take it the way I think it was intended, which is sort of a poignant nod back to when these actors had a really great heyday as studio contract actors.
Oh yeah.
And so Chaney, I think, is really wonderful. J. Carroll Nash, I think, is wonderful. I say wonderful because I mean it. Look, it's not Shakespeare. It's not the same thing, but they're indelible. And I don't want to short shrift my experience from that. I think it's great, and I like the fact that they, Russ Tamblyn. Basically, he was Riff in West Side Story, but they use him sort of like as a mixture between Riff and also Lee Marvin in Laszlo Benedict's The Wild One. There's all this sort of film history, referencing, which, if you look at it, how is it terribly different from what Tarantino did on a multi-million-dollar scale budget with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? It deals with the same sort of illusions. They're both, as subtle as it can be. When dealing with their themes. But you have to. But they're both kind of litmus tests. They both. This is like, I always think that, like, when I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I keep thinking that that's like if Al Adamson was ever given a $80 million budget,
Sure.
Because it's basically, if you watch, they make a great double feature because they both deal with a lot of similar, sort of metaphoric concerns about the experience of watching a movie and the repercussions of, what happens when a movie informs you and not life itself. Really interesting stuff. And it's not, again, I'm not reading into it. I'm just reading it. It's there. Just watch Dracula vs. Frankenstein and start pausing it. We kind of do that for you in the featurette, but pausing the dialogue and just saying, okay, what are they talking about? And then you just can't believe that they actually are talking about something other than just, the basic motivations to get the plot moving. Really fantastic, really great. I people ask me, I always say that's a classic, only because of the perhaps unintentional ambition, or not. No, it's intentional. What's the word? Like, not that wasn't the primary motive. They weren't thinking that was the sell point. They weren't thinking that was special. Even it was just how they did it, how they plotted it, how they wrote it. It just made sense to them, and that was the budget they had, and that was the course of. The way they put it together. It's just fascinating to me. I think it's thoroughly worth someone who maybe doesn't have a very high opinion of it to go back and just give it a separate look. Like, they don't have to shove their emotional response away. That's theirs, But to give it a chance separately to be appreciated on a completely different type of level, it's there. It's just undeniable, So it's fascinating film.
Okay, so the box set is called Al Adamson, The Masterpiece Collection. Do you believe being a master is just a matter of opinion?
Oh, well, sure, you're going to get into judgmental language. Yeah, of course. That's a laudatory phrase, but I bend with it because I can, if it, as long as it's not saying it's a disaster, you can say it's a masterpiece. I always go with the fact that anything positive is always a great starting point for deconstruction if it's necessary to, add that level to acknowledge there's another level of something. So Masterpiece Collection, I think it's also used probably in a sort of a wink and a nod sort of fashion. It's tongue in cheek. I think that they're saying masterpiece, partly I think to it's always a good thing to say it's a to pick someone like Herschel Gordon Lewis or someone who just is reviled mainly, is called it figured out as like an inept director, even though he was successful, but someone has to condescend to him or else they wouldn't have any kind of superiority over the films they're watching, right? So something I don't approve of, and I think it damages everyone's experience. But I think it's kind of tongue in cheek when they're saying it's a masterpiece, because you'll get someone like me and Kevin and we'll say, yeah, it's a masterpiece collection. Yeah, they're all amazing. I don't know. I can't imagine a life without these movies. Yeah, they're amazing. But, a masterpiece also indicates there's personal best. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily indicate that everyone's going to love it, but it's indicating a personal best, meaning there are some things in here which, in Al Adamson's, way of telling stories, not the reason why they were telling it. That adds gravitas, because it was so unpretentious and unnecessary to be as complex and perplexing as some of these movies like Brain of Blood or this Jesse's Girls is another one. Carnival Magic, I really give high props to. I love that movie, and it's nutty. Everything is what it's supposed to be. So you can't misunderstand me when I say that these movies aren't what they were supposed to be, which is, just out there, filling theater seats, getting money. That's it. It wasn't supposed to be like, here's our master artwork. Nevertheless, a masterpiece exists. So personal best exists. And there are some moments in his, in his filmography where it may not have been 100% due to him, but certainly his collaboration with the people that he was working with at the moment, and certainly battling against oftentimes the very worst of budgetary odds, right? So yeah, I think it's a sort of a pseudo-ironic or pseudo tongue-in-cheek title for the box set, but I think it's appropriate.
All right. Well, Howard, thank you very much for your time. Tell me about your plans for the rest of the year before I let you go.
I'm just basically what I'm doing now. I just want to continue doing these video essays for whoever's generous enough to accept them. There's definitely something that can be said about every movie that people aren't paying attention to. So I kind of want to see if I can sort of voice that in a nice style that is as entertaining, perhaps in a totally different way as the film itself. So that I have a few more of those. I have one coming up. I can't say what it is, but it's probably around fall. It'll be up. It'll be pretty close to feature length, and really sort of a parallax view of watching the movie that is under deconstruction. So that I'm looking forward to. Can't really say what it is yet, but it's something to look forward to. And I do audio commentaries for a myriad of companies. Whether whether people jibe with or not, that's life. There's a lot of people. It's funny doing audio commentaries for Blu-rays or whatever. I usually do them with either Nathaniel Thompson, myself, or Steve Mitchell, director of King Cohen, the Larry Cohen documentary, and various other people. Doing several with filmmaker Courtney Joyner. Who's a Western, cinema in general, but really his takes on Western is just, I could just live with him blabbing in my ear from the rest of my life. And I fantasize forcing him to do that occasionally. Okay. But other people will be doing a lot of those during the upcoming months. But it's nice when people are, you don't expect it, but people try to get in touch with you and they say, oh, it made sense to me. And like, oh, thank you. One person didn't waste my time, bibbling. But I appreciate that. We do it because we just want a community to grow a little bit and dialogue and discourse to go. So we have those things coming up. And also I have a couple of documentaries I'm trying to actually get working. Unfortunately, the virus situation really, inhibited a lot of things like travel and sitting in a room with people, interviewing them. Got to wait until things kind of iron out. So, a little bit of everything, but it definitely looks like if I survive, then it's an optimistic outlook for the rest of the year. We'll see.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.